There we go. I'm a little late with the, there we go. I'm a little late pressing the button, which happens sometimes. But this is AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. And I even, what do I usually say? We're a podcast by, for, and about people who have found a secular path to sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is our Friday live stream. I'm here with my co-host, Angela. How you doing, Angela?
Good. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hello. and we have a special guest. His name is Dale Kay, and he wrote a book called A Secular Sobriety. How you doing, Dale?
I'm good. Hi, John. Hi, Angela. And hi, everybody listening. And thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Well, it was nice of you to come here on such short notice. You know, we sometimes don't know what we're going to talk about until like just the day before we start. So that's when we reached out to you.
You know, it gave me something to do. You know, back in my drinking days, Friday was always my night to howl because I had a fresh paycheck. So this is my big Friday night now.
Cool. So we're going to talk about, before we do that though, before we get into the matter at hand today, which is going to be a discussion of We Agnostics and the way that Dale wrote it and ideas that you might have for how you would like to write it. I want to say some thank yous real quick. First of all, I want to thank Arthur M., who donated $200 the other day. That was just incredible. I really appreciate that. I don't say thank you very much, but I need to get better at it, because I really do appreciate it. That helps out tremendously. And he wrote a nice little note about how he likes the podcast. And I think he said he's 40 years sober, and that this podcast has been a breath of fresh air. So, oh man, it's just wonderful to hear that. Thank you for saying that. And we also got a couple of emails, and I just want to share a little bit about those. First of all, I got an email from Ryan, who's writing us. She's from California, Humboldt County, and she said that she's constantly struggling with the heavy Christian tone of most of her local meetings, that she's working the steps for the first time, and she's still seeking to define what her concept of a higher power is. So that'll be interesting. We'll be talking about that a little bit here today. And as a podcast lover, she stumbled upon this podcast, and she says it's been a lifeline. She said, extend her gratitude to my co-host, Angela, who shares really speak to her. She's really leaning into the step series that we did last year, and it's been so helpful. And that was just so nice to hear. And by the way, she was 90 days sober when she wrote that email. So congratulations, Ryan. Congratulations.
Yeah,
It's so wonderful to hear that. And I'm glad that the step series was helpful for you. And I'm glad that we did that again, and particularly that I was able to do that with Angela. I think that her perspective helped a lot. It's, you know, I hear from women more often than not about those step studies, and it's usually Angela that they like hearing about. So, you know, that was good to have her on there. And then we also got an email from Tia Meyer, Tia M. And Tia says that she's new to AA and she's had a hard time with the G word. And she felt like it was keeping her from making progress because she couldn't get past step 1. So she happened upon this website and the podcast. She says it makes her laugh and cry. And she says that she's happy that she's not alone and that she can succeed in staying sober. So yeah, you certainly can. And thank you, Tia, for writing. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you for everybody who has helped out this podcast and website. I really appreciate it. So anyway, there we go. Wanted to do that. So We Agnostics. Dale?
Yes, sir.
So you wrote a book called A Secular Sobriety, which is basically a secular version of the big book. And
of the first 164 pages.
Yeah, just the first 164. And, you know, it was really interesting the way you wrote it, because you just made some very subtle changes. You tried to stay pretty true to the original text, but you made some subtle changes which turned out to be fairly significant. And We Agnostics is one of those chapters that you rewrote, and that's one of the chapters that probably is one of the most hated chapters in our community, I suppose. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your book, why you wrote it, and then maybe talk about the chapter to the agnostics and what you didn't like about it, and also what you think the original author of the original chapter was trying to say.
Okay. Well, the reason I wrote the book is because I was angry. And
most people just start another meeting when they get angry in AA, but you wrote a book.
Yeah. But I had been going to a secular meeting since the mid 80s exclusively. I left traditional AA and was just going to this secular AA meeting. And when I first got sober in 81, I was given the fourth edition, the third edition, which was printed in 79. And so for, 25 years, I knew nothing about traditional AA anymore. I had no contact with them. And then I moved away, and my new town had nothing like my old meeting. So I started going to traditional meetings again. And I happened to be in a big book meeting. And so the next week, there was a guy there that I enjoyed. So the next week I came with my third edition big book, and it didn't take me long to realize that what they were reading and what I had in my book was different. I think it was like the page numbers or something were different or something. But anyway, it was only then that I found out that there was a new edition.
Yep, I think we lost him for a little bit.
This was like 2012 or 13 or something. So I was like a dozen years behind. But anyway, I was very curious about the new edition, and I bought one. And when I got home, I was very eager to find out what was in it and what had changed and stuff. And I thought, surely, in the last 20 so years.
Uh-oh. Well, he'll come back. I think that Dale was having some internet problems. Anyway, but I remember that story. He said that he was expecting that the big book would be different because it was a new version, and of course it wasn't any different at all. They just changed the stories. So
yeah, that's pretty much it. And that reminds me of when I was looking into AA to get sober and had attended Alateen, and so went online, and there was the pamphlet for the newcomer, I believe, and it said that AA was open to everyone, to people of all beliefs and non-beliefs. And so I thought, woohoo, they've progressed. And I went to a meeting and they were godding all over the place. And so I left. So yes, very familiar with that.
Well, so the chapter to the agnostics is really kind of an interesting chapter, I guess, from where I'm at now, and I think where other people are too. But I started my journey in sobriety in AA in a real traditional way, I suppose, at least from my perspective. Reading the big book repeatedly, and the We Agnostics is one of those chapters that I read, and I considered it to be step 2, which is basically coming to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. Now I don't think of it that way now, but that's what I thought of the book. I thought of that chapter then as step 2, and I read it, and I tried to get something good out of it, and I don't think it really bothered me very much all those years that I was reading it. There were some chapters, some paragraphs in the book that I thought were helpful. But after some time had passed and I realized I was an atheist, and I read that book and I thought to myself, and I read that chapter and I thought to myself, man, this is not right. This book, the chapter, you would think it's about how agnostics and atheists can get sober too, but instead it turns out that it's just trying to preach to the atheists and agnostics so that they too can believe in a God and become sober.
Right.
So a little disappointing.
And when we were doing our step series, mentioned before, it's been almost a year, I think. I think we started it in August of last year, or maybe, something like that. But when I was talking about that on step 2, I was talking about how I took people through the steps who mostly were in places where they could only attend traditional, I'm using air quotes there that nobody can see, traditional meetings, so that they would be able to fit in if they attended like a big book meeting where they read each chapter, things like that. And it was really more to give them, continue the hope, because all of us generally want to fit in when we get to AA. We want to be accepted. And so part of how I would take people through the steps and how I was taken through with step 2 was to go through that chapter and underline or write out all of the different terms for higher power that was in there, so that the women that I was working with concentrated on that part rather than the basically, putting agnostics and atheists down and trying to convince you that you'll believe and stuff like that. So channeling the energy to something that is a little more productive. But again, the reason I brought it up as when we were talking about it is that's when, pre-COVID. And so now, people can attend secular meetings everywhere. And so a lot of the people that are listening to our podcast now may not ever have to attend a a traditional meeting again, even if they live in faraway places because of Zoom. And a lot of our meetings are still going to be on Zoom long after this is over. So, I've had to adjust that a little bit, because some of the people that I work with now are people who contact me to ask for help or guidance or anything on the steps. It's not as much of an issue because they have more options and don't necessarily have to attend a meeting where this chapter is read out loud and such. So anyway, it was just something that I thought of when we were talking about this, is that, that's kind of how I used to do things. But now I don't know that I would need to do that anymore. I found that the Staying Sober Without God introduction, like the first chapter of it, pretty much takes care of that. I think it says it in a better way. And so when you were talking about rewriting it, I'm like, I don't think I'd rewrite it. I would just, leave it as a historical document, and then I would use some other material. And as we can see, we have lots of different material now, and I'm sure that we'll get some more out there as things continue. But you did rewrite it, so do you want to read some of what you?
I
wrote?
can now. The reason I did it is this was back in 2014. That was
way back when.
Yeah, it seems a while ago. It seems like it anyway. But at that time, that was when I was coming out as an atheist to my home group. Mm-hmm. And it was a very difficult time for me because it wasn't really accepted by everybody and at all, really. And I was so uncomfortable at that group. And it was a bunch of people that I'd been around for some 25 years. And to suddenly feel like I had to walk on eggshells when I was around them, and to tiptoe over all the words that I would hear in the meetings, and try to hold back what I really wanted to say, it was just incredibly frustrating. So I wrote a lot back then. And there he comes back. And I wrote from, hi, Dale. I'm just blabbering right now. I'm going to continue blabbering for a little bit. I'm talking about my We Agnostics now. I was telling Angela.
Did I go away?
Yeah, you dropped off. I think it was your internet Yep. Yep. But anyway, so we're going to get back to you, Dale.
Okay.
But we were just talking about how, you rewrote this. Angela was talking, and I agree with Angela. Her point was that, the big book should just be an historical document. No need to rewrite it. You just move on. We have more modern literature nowadays. And then she said, well, John, you did rewrite this. And I said, yeah, I did. But the reason that I did was for my own benefit. I was coming from the perspective of that was how I understood recovery, was the big book. And what I was doing at that time is I was reinterpreting it in my own way, in my own secular way. And when I read that chapter to the agnostics, I really felt that Bill W. missed the boat there, because it really could have been an opportunity to try to bring people together, rather than to divide them into camps of believers who are right and non-believers who need to convert. And so when I wrote it, I'm just going to read one little paragraph that I wrote that just kind of summarizes, I think, how I felt it could be more, I guess, I don't know. This is what I wrote. Though we respect and honor the experiences of our more religious members, we agnostics and atheists do not believe this help comes from God. However, we find no conflict with those who choose to define their experience in spiritual terms. We share the believer's humbling admission of powerlessness over alcohol, and we recognize that we must seek help from a power that is greater than ourselves. For many of us who are agnostic or atheists, this power comes from the combined experience of our fellow alcoholics who preceded us in recovery. So I'm just basically saying there that, we have more in common than not. It's just that, those who do believe in God, they're going to describe their recovery and what empowers them to stay sober a little bit differently than one who's an atheist. But when you really get down to it, the experience is essentially the same. And anyway, but they didn't go that route when they wrote this in 1939. So anyway, Dale, back to you.
Oh, okay. I don't know what you missed or what you didn't. I was sitting here rambling, and then it occurred to me
that nobody was listening.
something was wrong. But you're absolutely right. We all have our own paths, and the truth is, I think we all kind of do the same sort of things, but we label it differently, we look at it differently, we see it differently. So it's like we're all joining in fellowship. Many of us work the steps, and whether we're interpreting them differently or not, or looking at this chapter, We Agnostics, differently and interpreting it for ourselves, we're all really kind of doing it the same way. And, so it's just, I don't know, I find it rather confusing that people insist that others are doing it wrong. If you do it right, you're going to stay sober. If you do it wrong, you're not. Well, I know a lot of people that are doing it wrong and staying sober. And I know a lot of people who are doing it right and getting drunk. So, it just doesn't hold up. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
There you go. No, I agree with you on that. And I think essentially, when this chapter, if you take out all of the verbiage about, why one must believe in a power greater than themselves, even if you take out that language, higher power and power greater than yourselves, take all that stuff away. Essentially what we're driving at here is that, we are at a point in our lives where we've already admitted that we have a problem with alcohol, that we need help, and that we're just kind of coming to the conclusion that there are some other people out there, there are other resources out there that we can reach out for help. with our problem. And I think that that there's a certain amount of obstacles that we put in front of ourselves, or at least I did, that would prevent me from asking for help. And that was the most difficult part. Once I overcame the fear or whatever it was that kept me from asking for help, once I did ask for help, and it put me on the path to recovery.
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't write this book to have people accept my interpretation of any part of this program or fellowship. What I really wanted to do, and the real purpose of the book, is to allow people to understand that you can interpret it for yourself, and it's okay. To give people that freedom to look at it in a way that makes sense to them is very empowering.
Right. Yeah. Since it was, this guy, even wrote a book about it. So if he can write a book about his version of it, then I can definitely rewrite, or, do it in a way that makes sense to me. One of the things I laughed at, and I think somebody posted it earlier today, was a part of your book. And I think in the original text where you're echoing it was, we have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance, simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. And so basically it's trying to get at that, not everybody can explain how electricity works. And so therefore, maybe keep an open mind about the whole God thing, which still, I thought was condescending. But I loved your version, which is, let's see if I can read it right. The prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. And so it just made me laugh reading that as, the example or the way that you changed it. And that is more, present day knowledge and or theory and all of that. So I loved that. And I can assure you that I didn't laugh when I've read We Agnostics. So that was a nice change.
One of Peter T. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Peter T.
Peter T.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He loves that prosaic girder thing.
Yes, it's the best. It made me laugh so hard.
He'll say something like, believe because prosaic girders.
I think we should get that. I think Peter and I should get together and make T-shirts for the next conference that say that. So
Absolutely.
Peter, get a hold of me. I think we're on to something.
Absolutely. And the truth is I'm an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
I've been an electrician most of my life, and I was an electrical contractor, and I have a very good understanding of electricity. But the notion that, well, you can't see it, but we believe in it, so why not God?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wait a minute, we missed a couple steps here.
Yeah, there's a little dissonance there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So does anybody want to call in and share with us if they've rewritten them, or if they're inspired by Dale or John to rewrite them, or what are your thoughts about this chapter? Because I know in the more traditional meetings that I've attended, people have a lot of opinions about this. And then in the secular meetings I've attended, if this comes up, there are also a lot of opinions about this. And so we would love to hear from you guys and gals. I guess y'all is really a good way to encompass everybody without being gender specific.
Yep.
It's just really strange to me to try to say that because, it's not part of my.
I think in Missouri you're allowed to say y'all.
Yeah.
That
and
makes me very comfortable too.
In Idaho, we should as well because we have, farms and cowboys and stuff. So, I don't know how well it would go down in Portland or Seattle. But
I always think Idaho should be very folksy. Very.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking about when you were talking about how some of the more traditional groups and so forth might read this, differently and everything. You know what I was thinking about? I actually reread the chapter in the Big Book today, and there's a paragraph there that I have heard people call the quote bedevilments. And the bedevilments are opposite of the promises. So the bedevilments are saying all the things that are wrong with us, like we're miserable, we don't have good relationships, blah, blah, blah. These are the bedevilments. And then you have the promises that counter them later on. I don't know if that was actually on purpose that they did that. And I always found it weird, though, when I started hearing people do that, they would always talk about those bedevilments. I'm like, what are you talking about, bedevilments? Well, they're there. They're there in the We Agnostics chapter.
Yes, the bedevilments.
A lot of people misunderstand secular people. I remember I was on the beach one evening down in Florida where I lived, and we did turtle walks, where we introduced people to sea turtles and stuff. And I was walking up and down the beach with this guy that was from a religious college in my hometown. And we were talking about religion. It was a very friendly conversation. And he said something about atheists being angry. And I said, what makes you think atheists are angry? And he says, I don't know. He says, I just know that it's true.
Because they met John H. from Washington, D.C. Just kidding.
Well, there are a few of us belligerent savages, if you will, that like
we get angry. Yeah. I mean, there are things.
Yeah. And so do religious people.
Exactly. But, one of the things when we had the Toronto conference, I didn't get to share this with many people, but I had multiple legs of a flight home because it wasn't, inexpensive to get from Boise to Toronto. And on my flight home from Toronto, I was sitting next to a minister, and I only know this because he's the one who's talking to me. I'm introverted, but and so it was an interesting conversation having just left a secular AA conference.
Angela, we have a caller, and they've been on hold for a while because I wasn't noticing them. Hello.
Hello, this is Fred in Virginia.
Hi, Fred.
I spoke with you last week.
You
or
sure
the week
did.
Before, I think.
You sure did. Hey, I'm sorry.
How y'all doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
How y'all doing?
We all are doing fine. I'm sorry that I had you on hold for so long. I just didn't notice. I didn't have the screen up that shows the people calling in. So what's going on with you over there, Fred?
Don't worry. Don't worry about that. I'm enjoying the conversation. John and Dale and everybody, I like the topic. I was thinking some thoughts on it, and I know how we've become a new awareness in consciousness, and that the rules are changing. But as alcoholics all suffer from the disease, I don't find that really comprehend some of the things because my thought is on it. If we have this new awareness and consciousness, and we've always had it, we just weren't aware of it, and we didn't wake up to the fact. But is it everlasting? And if you don't believe there's a place as the afterlife, how could it be this awareness be the future of sobriety? Because all we have is now, but now just went by. So if you're thinking you had sobriety a moment ago, it's the next moment in the future that is the opportunity for sobriety. So if you're aware of the consciousness of sobriety is your future, then it's our responsibility to try to help those who still suffer. And whether they suffer because they're an agnostic or because they're just an alcoholic, I don't know the difference in that.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. I like
Can
that
you explain
concept.
it to me?
Dale might be able to.
Can you explain it?
Dale, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm explaining, but I kind of agree with that notion. This idea of being in the present. I was sober a second ago, and I'm going to be sober a second from now. But right here and now, I am sober. And, one of the things I had to learn in sobriety was how to keep my mind and my feet in the same place. And that is a very powerful concept for me, so that I'm not feeling a lot of guilt about the past or a lot of trepidation about the future or too much hope in the future or whatever. Allowing myself to just be in the present allows me to enjoy everything that is going on right now. Like, I'm sitting on my sofa and I'm looking out the window, and I have a bird feeder outside the window, and a cardinal just came by. And for me to be able to see that and appreciate it and enjoy it for what it is, the caller was talking about consciousness, and it's just an evolutionary thing. We have more consciousness than that cardinal does. But that cardinal has some consciousness too, although he depends more on instinct than conscious. He's just not as developed as we are. And we like to think that we're terribly developed, but the truth is our consciousness is kind of killing us because, we're destroying everything around us. But I don't know.
I think Rumi said this a long time ago. Rumi said this. He said something to the realization of self. When he realized his self, he realized he didn't know very much. So that's why more can be revealed. But recently I celebrated 33 years, and I was thinking that, sobriety's future, it's a developmental stage, because if you don't agree with the big book from 39 and you want to improve on the idea of as we understand, we don't really understand very much, do we?
No.
We just think we know everything.
Well, I do appreciate you calling. You made some interesting points there. When you were talking, though, you reminded me of something that I read in the Big Book in this particular chapter that I did disagree with. And that is that the assumption that is that if you don't believe in God, that therefore life has no meaning, that it just exists for, that it's meaningless. And I've never really understood that, because I think that we bring meaning to our lives, and I'm okay with there not being an afterlife. I'm okay with not knowing how the universe came about, although we have a pretty good idea. That stuff is okay, but
it didn't come about. It always existed.
Well, yeah, the Big Bang, whatever. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying, though. It's just like, I don't think that.
That means you're a creationalist if you think it came about.
Well, we can talk about that on a science podcast or something.
Well, I don't know if it's a science podcast.
Well, yeah. Anyway, you better get going. Thank you for calling. I appreciate it very much. Call back again sometime.
Thanks a lot. I'll talk with you another time.
All right. Bye-bye.
And you just be aware that life is only what you put into it.
True.
Is what you get out of it.
True.
So if you put good thoughts in your mind, you're going to have good thoughts.
Yeah. All right.
Take care now.
Take care now. Bye-bye. Okay, there we go.
That's an idea. Oh, I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to interrupt, but this idea of an afterlife, or it goes towards the notion of wanting to extend your life, and not have it end. And I was reading a couple of weeks ago about this sort of thing, and it said that our entire lives we seek more knowledge, and one lifetime is enough knowledge, is all the knowledge that we need. If we were to have more than this lifetime, we would learn too much, and it would drive us crazy.
Interesting.
And I haven't thought through that, but it's an interesting concept, to know too much.
And I think we get bored. Yeah, I think we get bored. If you haven't watched The Good Place, it's one of my favorite shows, and it kind of explores that in the last season of what that might be like, and I really love how they did it. It's a well written show, so check it out if you haven't out there. I think one of the things that John was trying to get to was the whole morality issue, that it seems that some people have the idea that if you don't believe in an afterlife, or don't believe in some sort of intervening higher power, then you can't have morals. And so I think that's where you're going. Am I wrong, John?
Yeah, that's right. I think, because I don't know what Fred was actually getting at there, but he just kind of triggered me to think back to what the We Agnostics chapter was saying about how, it's trying to convince the reader to believe in God, because if you don't believe in God, life has no meaning, basically. And I just find that argument to be kind of ridiculous. I do believe that we bring meaning to our own lives, but
absolutely.
Dale, you mentioned when we were talking before we started recording that if you were to write this book today, it would be a different book, that you've evolved a lot since you've written this. In what ways have you evolved in your thinking?
Well, yes, it would be a different book, because I'm thinking different. I've learned more things, and I'm curious about more things.
I know that I've thought about Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you paused.
I would be very bored with myself if I was content with my old thinking. This book it's 3 years old, and I'm very happy to know that I've evolved a little bit from it. And the primary place where I've been thinking or that I've been trying to come to better understanding is with language, the kind of language that we use. And I know, in the book, obviously rewriting the book is changing language. But I've taken a lot of it a little bit farther. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the term spirituality. Do I really need that term in my life? I mean, do I need that to describe the love and kindness and empathy that I have for others and for myself? I don't think so. Do I need the term higher power? Higher to me, means that it's like some kind of like hovering above me or taller than me. I don't think that word fits properly. I would prefer greater power. There's a lot of powers there's a lot of things that are more stronger than I am, that have more power than I do. Higher powers don't really exist in my life, but greater powers do.
Angela, what were you thinking?
So things like that.
Oh, I was thinking that, my first sponsor suggested that I rewrite the book, and the book that I would have written at that time would be different than the book that, I wrote when I was 3 years sober, than the book I wrote when I was 7 years sober, then, and so each time I get the idea, like, I should write a book, there's that part of me that's like, then, in 3 years, you're going to think something different, and you might be embarrassed by the book that you wrote. So maybe you should wait a little while and see what happens. But who knows? I agree with what Bree said in the chat, about COVID and accelerating, new literature. I don't necessarily know that we all need to write new big books, but I think having people write, more literature about how being sober is working in their life now in a secular way would be, fantastic, because I'm a yes and person when it comes to things like this. The more people write, the better. I may not agree with everybody, but that might speak to somebody that doesn't relate to me. And I would love to have that material out there to be able to point them in that direction so that they have something that gives them hope that they can get and stay sober.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how COVID-19 does affect Alcoholics Anonymous, because there are so many people now that are getting sober for the first time in these Zoom meetings, and there are people who are meeting other AAs from other parts of the world and other parts of the country, learning new things from each other. For example, our group has discovered a meeting at the Children of Chaos group in Austin that actually Bree wants to start doing, and things like that. We're just kind of picking up from each other, and I can see that there's going to be a need for, there's going to be some sort of a change. I think possibly, maybe for the better, for Alcoholics Anonymous.
I think you're right, John. I've been attending a lot of Zoom meetings, and I've noticed that the dynamics is different. And even my own dynamics, if you will, I'm much more comfortable in a Zoom meeting being candid than I am in a face-to-face meeting. And I think that, I'd like to think that other people are more comfortable being themselves also. And so I think that just that, instead of trying to be a people pleaser or trying to go along to get along kind of thing, is changing because of Zoom. There's truly more anonymity, if you will, because you're just sitting at home instead of in a face-to-face meeting.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I can talk with people all over the world and attend meetings all over the world and make friends all over the world. Although, I am American, so I may not ever get to see them again, in person. It depends on if Americans are allowed to ever visit other countries. But I love all of that part. I've made some great friendships since this started that I don't know that I would have before. Because we've had to rearrange our time differently, so even if you're in the workforce, your time is rearranged different than it was pre-COVID. So there's that. The one difficulty I have, or, I think with Zoom meetings, is that it's not as easy to intuit or to feel when another member is struggling and stuff. It's a lot easier to keep that hidden because, you can just either have your video off or not talk, or, there's a lot of ways in which you can keep that to yourself. And I think that at the in-person meetings, at least for me, I felt like that was harder to do. Like, I'm one of those people that if one of my home group members came up to me and said, how are you doing? I'd start crying if I wasn't doing well. It doesn't matter. I'd just start crying, and that's not really the same on Zoom. So that's an element that I miss and that I think was helpful within the home group community, particularly, is that when you're in person with other people, there is an energy, and you can feel sometimes when somebody's hurting, and you can also relate to them or show them that you care, even without talking about whatever is bothering them. And so, oftentimes they or I, leave the meeting feeling better, knowing that, I've at least been seen by somebody and that they know or care or, something along those lines. So I think that's a little bit of a difference in the Zoom.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Angela.
I think too about how I felt as a newcomer at my first meeting. And it was in 1988, pre-internet. It was not an online meeting. and I just remember feeling, I felt a sense of relief, and I felt like the people in the room really cared, and they didn't even have to say anything. It was just a feeling that I got from them. I'm not so sure if I would get that from a Zoom meeting, but the newcomers are getting something different, that still helps.
Right. And depending on the ages too, I think younger newcomers are more okay with this because a lot of them have lived their lives, through their phone. And I was talking with people before the COVID happened about how difficult some younger people, like the ages 18 to 24 were having with actually making friends in real life, because they didn't quite know how to do that. They knew how to text their friends and stuff, but to meet new people and form friendships was difficult for them. And so I think that's, where the Zoom maybe has a leg up is with our younger members, and that they, can interact, they can get the information they're looking for, and it's in a way that they're more comfortable with. And so, who knows, maybe that will be a benefit for them and keep them sober. But yeah, I don't know what it would have been like if this had happened when I got sober. I mean, we still had flip phones, I think.
Yeah, I think the truth is, I think the good parts of Zoom and the good parts of face-to-face meetings what will remain later.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I think that the online meetings are going to be permanent, and I think that that's a good thing. I really like the creative things that some groups have done by putting on like these workshops and seminars about different topics. Those have been really interesting. And, I've gone to some that were just, basically traditional non-secular groups and, like on AA history and stuff like that. And it's, it's pretty cool. It's kind of creative, and live streams that people are doing and podcasts. It's just all kinds of different ways now to, connect with other people in the program.
I actually miss the face-to-face meetings because one of my favorite parts of the meeting was the meeting after the meeting. A group of us would always go to dinner afterwards, or we'd go out for coffee or something like that. And it was that connection being made in that more intimate setting, instead of just the meeting room, is what has always been valuable to me from the very beginning. I remember my first or second meeting, this group of people invited me to go to Denny's for coffee. And I was like really quite taken aback because nobody had invited me to go anywhere for a long time. And I was like, what's wrong with these people? Why do they want to be around me? So it's been something that has been a part of my sobriety from the very beginning. And so I absolutely do miss that, and I look forward to it again. But I love this Zoom stuff. I mean, earlier this week, I was in a meeting in Ireland. I mean, with an Irish accent. How much better can it get?
Yeah. Well, I think of one of the new ways after COVID as well is that I keep harassing John that I think we need to take our show on tour, and that we need to go and do the podcast, live podcast from different meetings and stuff. And I think that'll be fun. I think it'll be a new thing, and I'm looking forward to it. So, everybody out there, push for the vaccine so that I can travel the world, basically. Do it for me.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been attending very many meetings lately. Just simply, I don't know. I've been talking about this a lot, and maybe I'm just telling myself I need to kick myself in the butt and go. But I just feel like I've been so busy, and I'm exhausted at the end of the day from staring at a screen and talking to people on a screen. And I don't know, man, it's kind of wearing on me after a while. But I guess I need to kind of break through that, because what I'm hearing from Bree anyway, she keeps me updated on what's going on with my home group, is it's just booming, that the group is growing. And she says that when we do start meeting in person, that we might need a bigger room. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I find, I'm on the screen all day, every day as well. And some of it's, service commitments, some of it's work and stuff. But I find that, on days like that, I do just turn off my video and put myself on mute and just listen. And then, that way I can be a part of the meeting, and I'm aware of what people, are going through. And if there's something that I'm really compelled to share, I can do that. But otherwise, it still keeps me, in the habit. It still, gets me a little bit outside of myself, which is generally what I need to do if I'm having one of those days, is to just kind of sit back and listen to other people's stories. And then I can still relate to what they're going through and what my experience is. And I usually feel better after the meeting. I can honestly say that, since this thing, I haven't attended a meeting on Zoom where I felt like I needed another meeting, whereas in person, there were many a times I attended a meeting where I'm like, I need a meeting because that meeting just really messed me up.
Well, Peter says that that Zoom makes it easier for thumpers to come and preach at us. And I have not experienced that yet at our group. But I know that it does happen. And as a result, I know some groups that are meeting, they want to keep their meetings kind of small and just to their own group, probably for that very reason. You get too many people coming in there, they might want to harass. But I've not experienced any of that and any of the Zoom meetings that I've gone to, I've not experienced any of that.
Yeah, I keep mine pretty tight, and I do, usually 3 at least co-hosts, so that if there's something that I'm missing, somebody else can jump in and have more eyes on it and things like that. So we haven't had that problem. In our meeting, there have been a couple of times where it's the opposite, where somebody's really upset and kind of going off on the opposite end of that. But we had a business meeting recently where we discussed that and decided that, just some of the senior members would redirect. So whoever is leading the meeting, if it's, enough people that you have to call on people, they'll just call on somebody who's more of a senior member to redirect the conversation away from God bashing or whatever that is. But yeah, we haven't had any of the thumpers or the bombers in our meetings yet. So
your group is so organized; it just blows me away. It just seems like you guys really have your act together. I guess our group does too.
Well, you haven't attended a business meeting, so that's yeah.
Oh well. So, Dale, thank you very much again for coming out here on such short notice and talking about your book and talking about We Agnostics and talking about everything else that we've discussed today. It's been an interesting conversation. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you to the listeners on Facebook and on YouTube. It's pretty incredible that there's been 30 people throughout this thing listening to this podcast, and that's it's a real compliment. It's a real honor to be able to spend this time with you. I love these Fridays. This is probably the best and most important meeting that I get during the week. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And Angela, thank you very much for all that you do here.
Well,
yeah, thanks for including me.
Yeah, I appreciate that you invited me here, and I hope that we've somehow inspired people to think for themselves and interpret all this for themselves. So now that we've done We Agnostics, we're going to have to jump into Two Lives next, I think.
Yeah, when John mentioned that, let's talk about We Agnostics and how you'd rewrite it. I'm like, I actually have a bigger issue with To the Wives.
Yeah.
And he's like, we'll do that another time.
That sounds really good. We should. There's actually a lot of material in there. So.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's it. That's another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, and thank you for those who have shared with us that you've been listening. It really, really helps us.
Absolutely. And thank you for calling in from Virginia. That was really nice to hear from you again. And so we're going to be back again next week. If you have any ideas of anything that you'd like us to talk about or a guest that we should invite on the podcast, please send us an email at editor@aabeyondbelief.org or john@aabeyondbelief.org or just post a message in the Facebook group, whatever. I'd love to hear from you and take your ideas. So we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back again next week for another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast.